My father once told a room full of people that I was the family's biggest disappointment. He said it like a joke, holding his glass high while everyone laughed, including the ones who should have defended me. That laughter burned deeper than any insult. I remember sitting there, frozen, tasting metal in my mouth, wondering how a parent could turn their own child into entertainment. That night, something in me cracked, quietly, cleanly, the way steel snaps under pressure. My name is Brenda Marks, and I thought I'd learn to live with that kind of humiliation. But years later, at my niece's wedding, when my father grabbed a microphone again and tried to make me his punchline, I finally learned what silence can do when it decides to speak. I've lived through many kinds of silence, on bases, in hospitals, in windowless conference rooms, but none ever felt as sharp as the one that followed my father's laughter that night. The ballroom glittered with lilacs and candlelight, laughter curling through the air like perfume. On the stage, my father, Walter Marks, silver hair, red tie gleaming like a warning flare, lifted the microphone with that familiar half-drunken grin. His voice, gravelly and sure of its audience, carried easily over the music. He said I'd never learned how to fit into a dress. The laughter came, polite and bright, the kind that cuts deepest because it sounds so civilized. From where I sat near the wall, my navy suit felt like armor at the wrong battle. I stared into my glass of dark wine, the reflection rippling like something wounded. Around me, faces turned, some pitying, some entertained. I caught the bride's uneasy sigh, and a soft murmur from somewhere close. Poor thing. Then, from a table in the back, a steady voice broke the noise. Sir, she was my squadron commander. I turned. Captain Lewis. His face was older now, but the eyes hadn't changed. 3 men rose beside him, posture crisp, unwavering. Sir, they said together. She commanded our unit in Qatar. The room froze mid-breath. My father choked. Wine sprang across the white tablecloth like a wound opening. The band fell silent, for one suspended second. Even the lights seemed to hold still. I didn't move. I just watched him, his face draining of color, his hands trembling. In that hush, I felt something shift, clean and final. The power left him and came back to me. I smiled to myself, quiet and steady. It was over, not the laughter, just the permission. I grew up in a small town outside Salina, Kansas, where every house smelled like gasoline and wet metal. My father, Walter, ran a tractor repair shop behind our house. I grew up to the rhythm of hammers and sockets, and the sting of his favorite saying, "Girls don't fix things, they marry men who do." He said it every time he caught me holding a screwdriver. My mother was the only softness in that place. She was the kind of woman who'd apologize for the rain, who believed that kindness could fix anything. She'd bring home old NASA magazines from the library, open the glossy pages, and point to the wings of airplanes. Every line has purpose, she whispered, even if people don't see it. I believed her. I loved the logic of machines, how a bolt cared only about torque, not about your size or your smile. But my father was a man who measured worth by calluses, not curiosity. He bragged to the neighbors that his daughter was good at cleaning floors. When my mother died in a car crash, he didn't shed a tear. He just muttered, "She was too soft for this world." That single sentence killed what softness I had left. I worked hard, earned a college scholarship, but he refused to sign the forms. No daughter of mine's leaving town to chase wind, he said. So I made my own escape. I sent in an application to the Air Force using a friend's address. When the acceptance letter came, I tucked it inside my coat pocket, heart pounding like a secret engine. On the night I left, he sat at the kitchen table, hands slick with oil, voice flat as metal. "Don't embarrass us like your mother did." I didn't ask what he meant. Some questions only reopen wounds. Rain hit the porch roof in sheets as I stepped outside, bag heavy with everything I owned. I promised myself I wouldn't come back until I was strong enough that he could never hurt me again. The Air Force taught me things my father never understood: discipline, respect, and how silence can save a life. I started at the bottom, fixing what no one else wanted to touch. My hands smelled of oil and jet fuel, but my heart lived in the sky. They began calling me Chief Fixer. I worked until my muscles shook, until even the pilots trusted my word over the manuals. One night in Qatar, an F-15 engine exploded on the tarmac. I led my team into the smoke, crawling under the fuselage while heat warped the metal above us. We replaced the turbine in 120-degree air. The pilot lived. He turned out to be a close friend of Captain Lewis, the man who would one day stand up for me when no one else did. I was promoted to lead our maintenance squadron. Each medal I received went into the same drawer, wrapped in a cloth I never opened. I didn't send photos home. If my father couldn't find pride on his own, I wouldn't hand it to him just to watch him throw it away. 12 years later, a back injury grounded me for good. I moved to Denver, traded flight decks for design labs, and learned to live quietly. The noise of engines faded, replaced by a steadier rhythm, the hum of a life I built myself. Then, one afternoon, a cream envelope arrived on my desk. Inside was an invitation, handwritten in looping letters. Grandpa will give a speech. I set it down and stared at it for a long time. I already knew I would go. Not for him, never for him. I was going back to Kansas for me. The Kansas wind was sharp that April, the kind that carried dust and memory. I drove the length of I-70, that endless strip of gray steel, heading straight into the past. When the Welcome to Salina sign came into view, something heavy dropped inside me, a familiar ache I'd mistaken for distance. The old house hadn't changed. Same dark cedar walls, same crooked porch light, the Mark's repair shop sign hanging by one rusted chain. I pushed open the door and stepped into a wall of oil and stale smoke. My father was behind the counter, bent over an engine block, fingers black with grease. He looked up briefly, expression unreadable. You look practical. That word again, Kansas for plain. I smiled thinly. You still working the same wrench? Still pays the bills, he muttered. No hug, no welcome. Just the old rhythm of two people who spoke in sparks and silence. That night, my brother Ethan dropped by the small house I was renting. He looked older, softer, still wearing that permanent apology in his eyes. Dad's gonna give a speech at Jess's wedding, he said. Don't take it personal. You know how he gets. Yeah, I said. I know exactly how he gets. The next morning, at the grocery store, I caught two women gossiping behind the oranges. Walter's daughter's back. Still single, still can't keep a job. I heard. He said she's doing clerical work somewhere. Poor thing. I was standing right behind them. I could have said something, but I didn't. Words only feed that kind of hunger. Silence. This time, wasn't surrender, it was armor. That evening, I drove to the cemetery. My mother's headstone leaned slightly, cracked down the middle, her name half hidden by weeds. I brushed the dirt away and sat beside it. I'm back. Mom, you'd hate the wallpaper. The wind rose suddenly, whistling through the oaks. For a moment, it sounded like her sigh. On the drive home, I passed my father's window. Through the curtain, I saw him rehearsing, hands moving, voice lifting, and that laugh, the one that had shaped my childhood like a hammer on metal. It still had the same rhythm. Later, unpacking my suitcase, something fell from a folded shirt, my old Air Force patch, edges frayed, colors fading. I hadn't touched it in years. I slipped it into the inside pocket of my jacket. Not for pride, for reminder. I'd faced worse fires than words. Jessica's wedding was held at the Wichita Country Hall. All marble pillars and chandeliers too bright to look at for long. The room smelled of lilacs and expensive perfume. But beneath it, I caught the faintest trace of smoke, the kind that warned of something about to burn. I wore a tailored navy suit and a small pin no one noticed. My seat was near the exit, the table where they put the guests who don't fit neatly anywhere. Jessica came by, trembling in her dress, and gripped my hand. I'm so glad you came. She looked beautiful. I told her so. Then he arrived, my father. Same swagger, same red tie, that grin shaped by whiskey and habit. When the MC introduced the father of the family, he climbed the steps like a man heading to the pulpit. Folks, I just want to say a few words about family, he began, and I could have recited the rest myself. Family's about hard work, showing up, doing something real with your hands, not sitting behind a fancy desk pretending you're changing the world. Laughter spread like wildfire. I stared into my glass, watching the wine catch the light like blood. He wasn't done. My daughter Brenda once tried to fix the lawnmower, took it apart, never put it back together. Guess some people just aren't built for fixing things. The crowd laughed again. I looked at my hands, the same ones that had rebuilt jet engines in desert heat. My thumb found the patch in my pocket. Stay still. At the far table, 4 men in tuxedos sat perfectly still. One of them, Captain Lewis, lifted his head. Our eyes met. He gave a single, deliberate nod. We're not letting this one slide. My father drew breath for his next joke. The story about me and the hot dogs. Before he could speak, Lewis set down his glass and stood. Voice steady as a command call. Sir, with respect. You might want to pick another story. She rebuilt an F-15 under fire. The laughter stopped cold. Forks froze midair. Just a joke, no harm done. My father managed. No harm when you're the one laughing, Lewis said evenly. The 3 other men rose with him. Sir, she was our squadron commander. The words detonated in the silence. Someone near the head table whispered, Colonel Marks? The name rippled through the room. My father coughed, choking on his wine. The red spilled across the white linen, spreading like a confession. I didn't move. The chandelier light caught me squarely, not mocking now, but clarifying. Truth made visible. An older man at the head table, a retired general by the look of him, lifted his glass. To Colonel Marks, he said, we serve because of people like her. Applause followed, uncertain, growing, real. I exhaled slowly. The room had shifted. The air itself felt new. Across the table, my father sagged into his chair, scrubbing the stain that wouldn't come out, whispering, it's just a joke. So was my childhood. Apparently. The laughter was gone. All that remained was silence, clean, heavy, and finally mine. The applause stopped, but the silence stayed, dense and metallic, pressing against my chest. In the low light, my father sat hunched, his hands trembling. A smear of red wine stained the collar of his white shirt, a wound he could never scrub out. Whispers rippled through the hall. She was their commander? In Qatar. I think she saved people. God, her dad must feel awful. I didn't look at him. I just drew a slow, steady breath, keeping my pulse calm, like waiting for an engine to reach thrust. Captain Lewis came beside me, voice low but clear enough to slice through the air. Ma'am, permission to stand down? Permission granted, I whispered. They sat, composed, but the room would never recover its rhythm. The MC cleared his throat, voice too high. And now, let's toast the happy couple. No one moved. The clinking of cutlery sounded like gunfire in a church. My father forced a laugh. It was just a little fun. Lewis cut in, calm and firm. Sir, with respect, we don't joke about the people who get us home. For the first time, my father had nothing to say. His silence wasn't humility. It was the dawning knowledge that he'd lost command. Across the room, Jessica met my eyes, her face pale. She walked to the microphone, voice shaking. Aunt Brenda, I didn't know. I'm sorry. I stood, took her hand. You weren't supposed to. You were supposed to live without needing to know. The room exhaled, as if everyone had been holding their breath. Then the retired general at the head table rose, glass lifted, to Colonel Marks, to dignity, wherever it hides. This time, the applause was real. My father didn't join. He scrubbed at the red stain, only spreading it wider. He'd always believed that if he wiped hard enough, he could erase consequences. I didn't feel triumph. I didn't feel pity, only a strange, quiet peace. I had finally come home, not to be loved, but to be seen. The music returned, slow and off-key. People pretended to eat, pretended to laugh, but the air had shifted. Every sound rang hollow. Captain Lewis leaned close, murmuring, We got your 6, ma'am. I nodded. I know. Thank you. The groom's mother approached, voice soft. Why didn't you tell anyone who you were? I smiled faintly. Because if they needed me to tell them, they weren't going to listen anyway. Jessica came next, eyes wet. I used to think Grandpa was just funny. I didn't realize it hurt. Most people don't, I said. until someone bleeds in public. My father sat alone, staring into nothing. The noise had abandoned him. For the first time, I saw the void that had built him, and the echo of it that had once lived in me. Someone tried to restart the mood. "Let's have the bride's first dance." Jessica stepped to the floor, music swelling. Then she turned to me. "Will you dance with me first?" The crowd clapped, genuine this time. We moved slowly, awkwardly, but each step felt like shedding an old weight. From the corner of my eye, I saw my father slip out of the hall, wine-stained napkin in hand. He didn't look back. I didn't stop him. Later, in my hotel room, I opened the window. The highway stretched endlessly under the night sky, headlights like fading stars. He lost the room, I thought. But maybe he finally found the silence he never gave me. I folded my Air Force patch beside the wedding invitation. Under the lamplight, it gleamed faintly. My quiet, final victory. The MC's voice wavered as he introduced me. I stood, heels tapping softly against the wood, each step steady but heavy. When I reached the stage, the microphone buzzed faintly. The light wasn't harsh anymore. It felt like an invitation. "There's a difference between laughter and cruelty," I said. "Only one of them leaves scars." The room went silent. Faces that once laughed now looked down. My father's eyes never left his glass. "When people laugh at you long enough," I continued, "you start to believe you deserve it, until someone refuses to laugh." I turned the glass in my hand. "To those who refuse, thank you. You remind the rest of us that silence can be louder than cruelty." Looking toward Jessica and Aaron, I added, "Marriage isn't about perfection. It's about respect. And respect isn't what you say when people are watching. It's what you do when no one remembers." For a long second, nothing moved. Then Captain Lewis caught my eye and gave a small, silent nod. I lifted my glass. "To Jessica and Aaron, may you never use love as a punchline." Applause came, gentle, genuine. No laughter, no whispers, only silence that finally meant respect. 3 days later, I drove back to Selena under a slow drizzle that streaked the windshield like faint scars. The Mark's repair shop looked the same, metal door half shut, the old sign leaning forward as if tired of holding its name. Inside, the air was thick with oil, dust, and cold. My father sat at the workbench, his rough hands holding a bent wrench, the one I dropped when I was 16. I nodded toward it. "You kept it?" So I remember how hard it is to fix things once they're already bent. The ceiling fan groaned above us, stirring the smell of rust and memory. I stood still, my voice steady. "Every time you joked, you bought power with my dignity." He didn't look up. "You could have told me who you were. You never asked." The words hung between us like the hum of a dying motor. He sighed. "It was just jokes. Jokes are supposed to be funny to both people," I said quietly. "Otherwise, they're just cruelty with better PR." Silence filled the space again. I turned toward the door, ready to leave, when his voice followed softly. "Maybe I can try to stop talking." I paused, looked back. "That's a start." He pushed the wrench across the table toward me. "Keep it," he said. "You fixed more than I ever could." I picked it up. The metal was cold, but my chest was warm. I didn't need an apology. I just needed him to stop turning me into the punchline of his pride. For the first time, neither of us spoke, and the quiet between us finally felt like peace. A week later, the Kansas sky was clear enough to see forever. I heard the sound of an old pickup stopping outside my house. When I opened the door, my father stood there, holding a basket of red apples lined with white paper towels. "Figured you might need these," he said. We sat in the kitchen, peeling apples. The knife scraped softly against the skin, a slow, familiar rhythm. Neither of us spoke. Sunlight filtered through the window, catching the faded photograph of my mother on the wall, her smile still gentle, still forgiving. "He didn't apologize," I murmured, almost to myself. "But once, he said my name without a joke. That's enough." He met my eyes. Voice rough. "You built wings stronger than mine." I smiled. A real one this time, small, but clean. The apples were crisp, sweet, quietly honest. Outside, wind moved through the fields, carrying the metallic scent of distant rain. This wasn't perfect reconciliation, but it was true. No chandeliers, no microphones, just two people learning how to speak without harm. The greatest revenge isn't humiliation, it's teaching someone how to speak gently after a lifetime of noise. The light touched my hands, hands that once held tools and now only held peace. The silence was my final medal.